Hey ladies, I'm back with part 2 of my 3-part story of getting pregnant with my daughter, my pregnancy, and then labor and delivery and recovery time. So this part is part 2, which is my pregnancy and how that went. It might not have all the information since it was almost 3 years ago. My daughter will be 3 on February 8th. So it might be a little bit, I might be going back and forth with things, but I do apologize about that, and I'll try and stick to the timeline as close as I possibly can. As I left off in my last video, I went to my first appointment. They confirmed that I was 3.5 weeks pregnant, and after that, I immediately started getting morning sickness. It's like once my body knew that I was pregnant, it was like, okay, we're gonna give you all the symptoms. I was extremely tired. I had to take about 2 naps a day. I was nauseous. I couldn't eat. The smell of cigarette smoke bothered me. It bothered me my whole pregnancy and then a little bit after. So that's everything. That started around 4 weeks. I started with being nauseous all day, throwing up. I couldn't eat certain foods that I used to eat. I used to love French toast. I couldn't eat French toast in the beginning. And everything just changed. My body started to feel funny, and I just those were basically my symptoms then. I started bleeding at around 6 weeks, which made me very, very nervous. I started to freak out. I went to my doctor. He gave me an ultrasound. Everything was fine. He said it was normal to have some bleeding during your pregnancy, and everything was fine. Baby was fine. And I said, okay, And then my next appointment was at around 10 weeks. And that whole time I was still nauseous, morning sickness, couldn't eat certain food. I was sensitive to smells. I was going to the bathroom a lot. I also had very, very bad leg cramps. They weren't Charlie horses. It was just very uncomfortable. It was like growing pains. That's what my mom used to call them when I was little. My legs hurt. Just that feeling in your legs. It was like restless leg syndrome, was the symptoms that I had when I looked it up, because I couldn't sleep at night. I was in so much pain. I would be hunched over, crying in the middle of the night. My fiance was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, my legs hurt so bad. I couldn't figure out what it was. This kind of lasted almost my whole pregnancy. So I think the baby was just on a nerve the entire time or something. I don't know, but it was horrible. And then at 10 weeks, I had another ultrasound. Everything was fine. I didn't gain any weight. Normally, you gain weight, but it's common in plus size women. I was plus size at the time. I still am, obviously. Hello. But I didn't gain any weight. I lost 30 pounds in my first trimester. The doctor wasn't worried because baby was still growing. So I feel like this is a very important part of my journey, and where my fiance and I are now today. But about 2 months after I found out I was pregnant, my fiance got let go from his job. I wasn't working. I couldn't find a job. I know they can't not hire you because you're pregnant, but I should have probably hid this from people when I went on job interviews, but I didn't. I'm an honest person, so I wanted to be honest. I couldn't find another job, so my mom, she had a full house at the time. There was no really room for me, I guess you can say. I don't know. And my fiance went to live with his uncle, and I went to live down in Sarasota, Bradenton area, down in Florida, it was a Christian-based maternity home type thing. There was I think they have 4 houses now, but they had 3 houses then. And I was in obviously the older women's house. I made very good friends who I still speak to today. It was the greatest experience of my life. I I'm so thankful for that program, and it has made my faith. I was Catholic growing up, and going there and going to Christian church just made me realize a million different things. I accepted God into my life then, and it's just been, my life has been crazy ever since, but I've been very blessed ever since, and I don't know what I would do if I didn't go there. I didn't stay there my full pregnancy, which I'll get into in a second, but I went there, had to switch doctors. I didn't like the doctor there. I was traveling to visit my fiance about once every other week, so that was difficult. We were apart. Every time I had an ultrasound or any type of appointment, not a regular like appointment, but if I towards the end of me staying there, I had to have more ultrasounds. So every time I had to have one, he would come up at around 16, I would say around 18 weeks, because that's 18 weeks is when I went in for my like anatomy ultrasound and to find out the gender of the baby. And when I went for the ultrasound, they couldn't find the gender, which I didn't know until I had her. By the way, no, like we couldn't find it. So that appointment, they realized that my cervix was short, that I had an incompetent cervix, and that I was starting to dilate a little bit. Not a lot, but just a little. And they told me that I had options. They could give me a medicine, like a pill to take. I could ignore it and just see what happens, or I could set up to have surgery where they put in a cerclage, I believe it's called, where they basically just stitch up your uterus, so that your cervix, I don't remember what it is, but they stitch whatever up so that you don't dilate and go into early labor, which is something I will most likely have to have every pregnancy. But instead of them catching it so late, the next time I do get pregnant, they would put their cerclage in at 12 weeks to prevent the early labor. So they set my surgery up for, I think, 2 weeks from that day. I was put on bed rest. I couldn't work. I couldn't really do anything. So I basically sat in the maternity house, all the time. I went to church, we had Bible study, we had groups. I did all that, but I don't know, I was going crazy. And that Saturday night, I woke up, I went to lay down for a nap, I woke up, I was very nauseous. Everything was very tense around my stomach. It was tight. I couldn't understand what was going on. I didn't feel good, so I said, maybe, let me take a shower. I got in the shower, and I started bleeding a little bit, and I started throwing up blood, and I freaked out. I didn't know what to do. My roommate, at the time, she came in because I was screaming. She came into the bathroom and was like, what happened? I told her, and they rushed me right over to the hospital because I didn't know what was going on. My doctor just so happened to be on call that night. So he originally he said baby was fine. They did an ultrasound, heartbeat, everything was fine. He said that he wanted me to go back home and then come back on Monday morning. Oh, wait. No, I'm lying. Hold on. Let me back up. Before that happened, my surgery was scheduled for that Monday, the Monday before. And I waited there all day to have the surgery. My fiance came. We sat in the hospital literally from about 7 o'clock in the morning until about 9 o'clock at night. There was emergency C-section after emergency section after emergency C-section. My doctor never got to me. They ended up putting me in like a pre-op room. At one point I thought I was going to go get the surgery to have it put in, because they can't do it in the office. You have to go to the hospital to get it done. And he finally came in and he said, I'm swamped. I can't do this. We're going to have to set another date for the following Monday. Okay, fine. So that's when I went back to the house. My fiance went home. Well, that Saturday before my surgery, I was supposed to have surgery that Monday. That Saturday is when everything happened with my stomach tightening up, which I was having contractions, which is what ended it up being. I didn't know at the time, first baby, not really sure what it feels like. So that's what happened, and he was going to keep my surgery for Monday, wanted me to go home, and then he said, you know what, I'm just going to schedule you first thing tomorrow morning before any of my C-sections come in, my scheduled C-sections. I'm just going to schedule you. first thing Sunday morning. I said, okay. So I called up my fiance to let him know. It was kind of late, and he said that he would be there first thing in the morning. His uncle would drive him. His uncle was sleeping already, so his uncle didn't want to drive. And would drive him first thing in the morning. I called my mom and let her know, and she's like, do you want me to come? I'm like, no, Josh is coming, I'll be fine. So that morning, I didn't sleep that well at night. I was very nervous because anything can happen. It's very risky to do the surgery. I was supposed to get a spinal tap, like if you would for a C-section, and they ended up deciding to put me under. I think my doctor that I had was scared of my weight because I was plus size. He always referenced it. Anything he did, he's like, oh, well, I have to do this because you're this. So I think they were just afraid because I was plus size that they wanted to put me under instead. I didn't really like my doctor down there anyway, and that's mainly why I ended up moving back. But I went in, they ended up putting me to sleep. I woke up all over the place. They just emptied my bladder, but I kept telling them I had to go to the bathroom. And this was around around 20 weeks is when this happened. And it was in October of 2010, so it was around 20 weeks. And it was very scary. My fiance wasn't there yet. They were on their way and they got stuck in traffic. Scary. I didn't like waking up by myself. Thankfully, about 5 minutes later, we had house moms. She was off for the weekend. They're off on the weekends, our house moms. We have weekend house moms. But she came to visit me because she knew I was by myself and that Josh wasn't there yet. So she rushed up to the hospital to sit with me for a little while in recovery. And then they moved me to my room because my doctor decided they were going to keep me overnight. Normally you're in and out, you go home that day, but he wanted to keep me overnight for observation because I was plus size. Which I'll probably do a video on being plus size and pregnant, and because it's not, just because you're plus size doesn't mean that you, one, can't get pregnant, two, have a normal pregnancy. So I'm going to do a video on that too, because I feel like a lot of plus size women are scared of getting pregnant because of that reason. I'm like out of breath, I'm talking so fast. Just this video is getting kind of long, and I'm only at halfway through my pregnancy. So that was basically, what happened. My fiance came, they let him stay the night. So he stayed the night with me, and then the next morning, everything was fine. My urine output was fine, baby was fine, was moving, everything was fine. And they discharged me around, I would say about 3 o'clock that afternoon, the next day. We went grocery shopping, so I had food because I was put on even more bed rest after the surgery, and I really couldn't do anything. So we went, and so I had them to help me with groceries and things like that. And went back, unpacked groceries, and I went and laid down because I was extremely tired. I didn't sleep, through the night at all. Because every little thing, kept me awake. It's very hard to sleep in a hospital. So I did that, whatever, and then about 2 weeks later, I decided it was in my best interest for my child, and for me. We had to go to certain doctors. We couldn't go to any other type of doctors that was kind of far away, and all the really good doctors, from what I heard, were kind of far. So at that point, I lost my car because I wasn't working, and I was only wasn't even 2 months behind on my car payment from not working, from being pregnant, and they repoed my car. But that's a whole nother story. But that's what happened, and I finally was like, I can't stay here anymore. I called my mom crying. I was like, Mom, like, I can't stay here. Like, this doctor, I can't. I don't feel comfortable. I don't want this doctor delivering my baby. Don't want to be anymore. I was like, fine, whatever. I'll come get you in 2 days. Well, they told me, because I wasn't really able to do anything, like to volunteer or anything like that, you either had to work or volunteer in order to stay there. And I couldn't do either or. So I just wanted to get home. So I ended up taking a taxi from the maternity home to where my fiance was living at his uncle's house. My mom was away, so that's why she couldn't come get me at the time. So she's like, you know, if you really want to leave, whatever, go. You know, she sent me money for me to go get to the taxi and go, you know, because I was a while away, so it cost a little bit to, you know, take a taxi all the way that way. So I took the taxi that, you know, there. I stayed there for 2 days, and then once my mom came back, she immediately came to get me from there. And went back around 35 weeks, my pressure started rising. And at this point, I still hadn't gained that much weight. I was still, I think I only gained a total of like, I went back up to, I lost a bunch of weight in the beginning, like I said. So when I delivered, I was at my weight that my pre-pregnancy weight when I delivered. So they were fine about that, but my blood pressure kept rising. I didn't have high blood pressure to begin with. Take 3 of the glucose tests, 1 in my early pregnancy at the other doctor, and then I did it again around 28 weeks. Yeah, I'm jumping around because I keep forgetting things. At 28 weeks, and that one came back high, so maybe do the 3-hour one, which came back fine. So I didn't have gestational diabetes. My pregnancy was, you know, normal except for the cerclage, and then up until 35 weeks, and my pressure kept going up. Or actually, it was probably around 32 weeks, because I remember from 32 weeks to 37 and a half weeks when I delivered, I was going every week for an appointment. And I always had to have a non-stress test in the office. So for around 33 weeks, I started having high blood pressure, and they were just monitoring it very closely. I was only 2 centimeters dilated at 34 weeks. 35 weeks, I was 2 centimeters dilated. I stayed that way, and I went in for my 37-week appointment, and that Monday, and there was protein in my urine, and my blood pressure was really high, and he was getting a little bit nervous, and he also thought that the baby was going to be big. I didn't know what the baby was. I went for 3D, 4D ultrasound. We paid for that when my mom did as a Christmas gift to us. Paid for that. We couldn't even find out the gender there, and since it was I didn't know there was any where I live now, I didn't know that there was offices around us. So I went all the way to Orlando for it. So I didn't want to go back and forth, because like they guarantee that they'll find the gender, and you keep going back until you find out for free. But I didn't want to keep going back and forth because it was so far, and I was getting really like late into my pregnancy. I was uncomfortable sitting in the car for that long. So after that, I went with my 37-week appointment. My pressure was high, and he came in and he said, you know what, we're gonna induce you on Wednesday. My best friend was with me at the time. My fiance was working. He was still living at his uncle's house. He was working, doing side jobs with a friend every day. It was just under the table. He has a painting business. His friend did. So he was doing that. So she took me to my appointment. My mom was working. And she started crying. She's like, oh my God, you're gonna have a baby in 2 days, and blah, blah, blah. So he's like, okay, you know, I'm gonna go call the hospital, tell them that you're coming in Wednesday morning. I'm gonna give you all your paperwork, get dressed, and come out. When I come out, he's like, actually, we're gonna induce you tomorrow. You need to be at the hospital at 4:30. And I was like, what? Oh no, he said you have to be there at 5:30. I was like, oh my God. I started freaking out. I was like, at this point I had nothing. I had a bathtub and some clothes, and I had the stroller in the car seat. My friend threw me like a mini baby shower, because I wasn't gonna have a baby shower till after the baby was born, because I didn't know what the baby was. So I didn't want just neutral things. So I never registered for my epidural, because you have to register for your epidural here. You have to go to a different office to register. Thank God the week before that I went to the hospital and registered at the hospital the week before that. But I didn't, it was almost 5 o'clock on a Monday. It was a late appointment. Freaking out. I called my fiance to let him know, and his uncle worked at Disney, so he wasn't home. And I was like, oh my God, like, you need to come tonight and help me get everything ready, because I was living at my mom's still, and I just started freaking out, and I just didn't know what to do. And we had to rush to the place to register for the epidural, because if not, they wouldn't have given, they probably would have still given me the epidural, but I probably would have had to pay for it if I didn't register. My insurance wouldn't have covered it. And we rushed there. They stayed open late for me. Thank God. Like, I called them and I told them, like, we just found out, because it was close to 5 o'clock. And called my mom. First I called my fiance, I called my mom, I called my dad, I called my friends in New York, I updated on Facebook what was going on, and I didn't have a bassinet, I didn't have a crib, I didn't have anything yet. I still thought I had 3 weeks. So I went home, freaking out. My mom's starting to freak out a little bit. She doesn't know what to do. She called work and told them, like, I'm going to come in the morning, and then I'm going right to the hospital. So that was my night. After that, I packed my hospital bag. My fiance ended up, his uncle, right when his uncle came home from work, Josh packed a bag and, came to our house and came to my mom's house. And I was up almost all night, and I woke up at 4:30 to shower. And then since my mom had to go to work, she works with autistic children, so she had to go in just, to transition them, that she wasn't going to be there. And then she was coming right up to the hospital. So my best friend she told me that she would take us, because she had school anyway early that morning, so she would just take us and stay at the hospital with us. So that's what we did. And then, so that we went to the hospital. We got there around 6. So I'm going to stop there for right now, since this video is very, very long. And I'm going to go in next part 3. It will be after this video, which will be my labor and delivery story and recovery, since it wasn't that long. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I do apologize for going back and forth and being out of breath. I just really wanted to get this filmed and, get it out to you guys. For anyone that, is pregnant for the first time or anything like that, kind of what I went through. I didn't really go into depth, about a lot of things, but if you do have any other questions about anything, leave them below, and if I get enough, I'll make a video on those questions. If not, I'll just reply to you individually. But thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe if you have not, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, ladies.